Welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast, brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly, reflecting our shared ambition to help coaches have the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. We hope you enjoyed this episode and thanks for listening. Hi Pete, welcome to Soccer Coaching Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, Scott, and I'm really pleased that you've reached out to me so that we get a chance to chat all things football.
Well, it took me a while to get the confidence. I said briefly before we hit the record button, there was a few guests when we started this we wanted on, and you were top of the pile, Pete. Honestly, you were. And I thought I need to get to a certain air of confidence to be able to reach out and see if you'd do it. But you were kind enough to say yes straight away. So thank you for that. And I know you're busy like everybody, but I'm grateful for your time. What listeners won't be able to see is your wonderful background. And I feel like I've dialed into a different cosmos because you got this space background and you're looking very well, like I've dialed into you on a space station somewhere.
Well, lots of people say I live in my own little world, so I think it's quite pertinent. Yeah, certainly my wife does.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, it will be just a conversation around all things to do with football. You know, the podcast wasn't really ever set out to look at anything particular, but it kind of took a road down more of a grassrootsy foundation phase. You know, that's kind of where we talk about most things. But I think these things really, the conversations relate to all areas of coaching. So, but certainly in that space, you know, dare I say, you're definitely one of the experts, no pressure. But we'll have a chat just about football more broadly and some of the things that, you know, hopefully will be useful for listeners to pick up and get your views and thoughts on. But before we start, as is the case in all these podcasts, I know you work very well. I followed you for a number of years, not in a weird kind of stalky way, just because I like what you put out there and stuff. But in case there's anybody out there that hasn't heard of Pete Sturgess, which I'll be surprised there's not, but if they haven't, a bit about your background and what it is you do, Pete, if that's okay.
Yeah, obviously when I was very, very young, a lot younger than I am now, there was still the opportunity to trial at various professional clubs. I did a lot of that in the Midlands, where I'm obviously from. It didn't come to anything, so I played non-league for about 15 years. So that helped me just get a real feel for football, being coached by different people, getting an understanding about the game. So although I've never played at professional level, I think I've invested a lot of time both in playing, but also studying and learning about coaching. So I think that part of my life, I still rely on now. I was an engineer at the time, so that gave me the skills, the notions, the abilities to plan, to really be precise and to look at all eventualities. So I think some of those skills that come from broader work or broader life, they can still impact on you as a person and as a coach. I then had a change of career and I trained as a primary teacher. I never actually worked in the primary sector other than during my teaching practices. And then I went to work for 8 years in further education. So I was working with 16 to 18-year-olds. And to be fair, there's not a great deal of difference, certainly in the approach, structuring learning, creating the right environment. So that was really productive. I then went as a sole trader. I started my own business, and it's still running today. In fact, this year is our 20th year. So a big shout out for Skillwise Sports. They're doing some fantastic work, and it's a lot of it is based on the things we'll hopefully talk about today. Then I was lucky enough to work in the boys' professional academies with Derby County. I was there for 4 years. And then from there, I was invited to come and join the FA. And I've been there for the last 17 years. So a little bit varied, but I think from each experience you get and each opportunity you get, you try to take as much from each one as possible.
Congratulations on the 20 years anniversary for Skillwise Sports. That's fantastic. Well done. Well, hopefully that'll come up more in the conversation. So the FA roles, what have you done and what do you currently do at the FA?
I started as a regional coach for Yorkshire, which was, ironically, I was living in Wigan at the time. So every morning I was crossing the Pennines and either going up to Hull or the North Riding or all parts of the northeastern Yorkshire. And again, that had a real grassroots focus and allowed me to get a real feel for the terrain and the people you were dealing with, and really what their context was. Because I think it would be very wrong of me to say, look, stop everything you're doing, you need to start doing this, without finding out what the life of that coach is. I knew it from my own perspective because I took my sons under 19 right through to their under 16 year. So I'd been through it, but we all experience it differently. So I think that really helped me those 3 years. And then I was lucky enough to be asked to become the national lead for the foundation phase. And that's obviously what I've been doing for the last 14 years. But if working with the FA, I was also asked to be the head coach of the national futsal team. And I had 8 fabulous years with the seniors. We punched above our weight, absolutely. And I think we almost set it up ready for the next phase of its development. But unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, that's now it's on hold at the moment. So the England setup is now no longer there. So yeah, at the moment I work in the professional game team, but my remit is across the grassroots game, but also the boys' academy.
Fantastic. We've had a couple of episodes covering futsal. We had Louis Melville on doing one talking about that, which is a fantastic ambassador
Louis
for it.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. And it seemed like there was getting some momentum, maybe, I'm going to say probably pre-pandemic, right? It was really going the right way with futsal. And I'm sure that didn't help things. I hope it finds its place again. It gets its momentum back, because we had our younger kids doing that, like 7, 8, 9-year-olds. And I think that was probably, out of all the football development things they were doing, I said that had the greatest impacts on how they progress, because it's such a wonderful version of the sport, isn't it?
Yeah, it will come back, I'm sure, because the game is, I think it's integral to our overall development of our key strategic aim, which is to produce more skillful players. Exactly. And futsal has such an important role to play within that. But it's also another format that if players don't want to go down the 11-a-side route, they can really challenge themselves technically and tactically by playing futsal. So I don't think we're done with futsal yet.
Good to hear. Okay, well, look, there's so much we could cover because you've got such a great history. I'm sure it'll fit around different ways anyway, but I'm going to try and keep myself on message and stick to the kind of conversation around really foundation phase and player development. That's what I'd like to talk about, if that's okay for the podcast episode.
Yeah.
So, and it may seem like a silly question, but let's make sure we're on the same page. I think, just what is the foundation phase, Pete, and why is it so important for long-term player development?
Yeah, well, if you wanted an age range, it probably falls within that 5 years of age, partly because the academies now are recruiting younger and younger. That could be another episode in itself, but right through to 11 or 12 years of age, we are having some quite detailed discussions at the moment, certainly within the boys' academies, as to whether the foundation phase should actually continue for another year or two to take kids through moving into high school, which is a huge transitional period, but also taking lots of the players through puberty as well, making sure that we really care for them. I'm not saying they're not cared for if they move into the next phase, but I think we can continue the foundation phase key principles for another 2 years. And that might best suit that journey through puberty and those unsettling years where you're becoming a teenager. So it's roughly between those age bands.
That's so funny, because my oldest is going under 13s and technically left the foundation phase, but there's so many things I see in him and his team that you think that the foundation phase has got so much relevance still to what they're doing in their development that it feels like it's too early. It didn't feel like too early maybe 3 years ago, but now I'm there, I think actually it is too early. So it's great to hear you looking at that.
Yeah, the more we discuss it, the more we are coming to the idea that as soon as you move to the youth development phase, you align yourself more with the adult game, the 11v11 game, and not the benefits of small-sided football. So if we could keep the boys for another year or 2 years and stop that race towards, the adult game, I think we can really accelerate and give their development a real boost for another 2 years. And that's not to say that we have no idea what the end line is. We absolutely do. But I think those extra 2 years of the kind of development and priorities we have in the foundation phase might just be, really good for some players, if not lots and lots of players.
Pete, why is the foundation phase such an important kind of window, if you like, for players' longer term developments, not just the here and now, but also how they might be playing their football or loving their sport maybe in 5, 10, 15, 20 years later?
Yeah. If you're a parent, the advice now, certainly in early years, is how important the first 1,000 days are. So the first 3 years of a child's life is such an important period for development, but that doesn't stop. And it's important at that age because of the plasticity of the brain and its ability to change and shape and be influenced by the opportunities and experiences that the child receives. So in a football sense, we want that plasticity to be used so that we can blast the kids with as many different experiences, as many different problems to solve. We want to find out what their thoughts are. We want their opinions. All of that will have a huge influence upon how the brain develops. And all we want to do is build on that in the years that come. So challenging them to play different formats, challenging them to move in different ways, challenging them to think creatively and tactically in an age-appropriate way is all needed so that we maximize the development, that the brain is actually, it's a gift. We've got them in this magical period of development. And so I think an approach that recognizes that and tries to meet the needs of the children within that period is a really good program and a really good priority and a base to start from.
You've probably touched on my next question there, because I was going to ask you, it's a big question really, but given the fact that it is a key window for young players, and given the fact that I would imagine that most the players in this country that are being coached in that phase, if you like, are probably being coached by volunteers, probably volunteer parents. I think you said you had your kids, your own son's team, often doing the best that they possibly can, with the information they have available to them, with limited resources and times. What would be some of the key messages or the things you would recommend for coaches in that space to focus on, given the fact that, the grassroots has its own challenges with regards to results and trying to win games? We'll come to that a bit later on. But just if you're going to create a session around kids and have that foundation things, what top tips might you have for coaches in that space?
Yeah, I mean, because the foundation phase covers quite a broad scope, certainly within age and development and abilities within children. Certainly at the younger end, I think it should be more of a celebration that the children have actually chosen to try football. So the results thing, I think we should park, because the children will tend to always be competitive. So if you organize a game with 5, 6, 7-year-olds, it will be a competitive game. But if we can approach it from a coaching perspective, and certainly the adults and the parents watching, if we could just celebrate the fact that these young children have chosen to try football, to be with their friends, to come and engage with the sport that we all love, rather than suddenly making it this pressurized environment and pressurized system that it can tend to be. I think that sets our stall out right the way through the foundation phase, because we can have both. We can have this celebration of football and it can still be competitive, but the adults involved have to be really role modeling how to win, lose, play well, play badly, how to deal with all of those imposters in a respectful, sporting, and sportsmanship way. I think that's the critical thing within the foundation phase, because children pick up on the attitudes and beliefs of the adults very, very quickly. So if they see that, throwing your teddy in the corner or abusing the referee or being told to go and sort somebody out on the other team, if they think that's the adults, the way that the adults are saying, this is how you behave in this situation, the children, they're going to be influenced by that. So I think we have a real chance to be a role model. And that's aside from any activities that we might do with them.
How important is player ownership in that process, and the players feeling they're part of that journey and not necessarily the coach making all the decisions? And if it is important, at what age can that kind of start to take place?
We've, ironically, and I don't want to hijack the focus of the podcast, we're piloting at the moment an early years program for children who are under fives and under sixes. And one of the biggest things that we are working on is giving children a voice, even at under fives and under sixes. So it comes with asking coaches to listen more, which is a challenge in itself. But also in listening more, we can include the children, we can listen to their responses, we can ask them questions about, is this challenging you enough? How could we make it harder for you? If it's too hard, can we change it? And can you help us come up with an idea to change it? This process of empowerment and involvement and giving players more agency and choice can be started right from the younger ages. We've got coaches who work with our older England development teams, and one of the comments is, we've got no leaders. Well, if people are never given the opportunity to contribute or to collaborate or to be asked their opinion, then those leaders won't emerge. So we can actually start it off in the foundation phase and build on it at each phase of their development.
I think that's excellent. And if I'm guilty of this, back when I first started coaching, was underestimating just how clever these young players are, at 5 and 6, and actually they can tell you what they think, and they can improve a session if you ask them what rule to put in or how we might make the space different and stuff. And they've got often better answers than I've got as the coach, if you like. What about things?
The sessions that we've watched, sorry, Scott, the sessions that we've watched where coach, because it's a leap of faith for the coach, because whatever age you work with, if you ask a question, you've got to be ready for all the different responses that you might get. I think if a coach is prepared to take that leap of faith, the boost and the energy that it brings into the session is worth it, because as soon as children feel included, their levels of motivation and engagement goes through the roof. So I just think it is worth just taking that leap of faith, even if you may get your fingers burnt in the early days. But I think it's a skill that the coaches need to develop just as much as session design or technical and tactical detail. They need to develop the ability to question effectively and then deal with the responses that they get.
That's going to be one of my questions then, Pete. I think is the challenge sometimes as coaches, particularly again looking at volunteer coaches, the fact that it's not necessarily about your football knowledge that's important. It's more about understanding child development and learning. And like with your background with engineering and education, I mean, they're massive attributes, that transferable skills you could bring into the world of coaching. I can see that. And I guess not every coach has got a background in education or something that's going to transfer quite as well. Is that part of the problem?
I think rather than calling it a problem, I think it's an area that, just like I did many, many years ago, thought, you know what, if I'm going to be really good at this, I need to know more about the children. And it really did come to me one evening when a 10-year-old friend of my son who was in the session turned to me, he tugged my sleeve actually. And I said, Nathan, what do you want? He said, Pete, this is boring. And you know what? I thought from a football point of view, I'm giving the kids everything that they need. But for Nathan and probably everybody else in the group, I wasn't giving them what they needed as children.
Yeah.
And it just gave me, it really hit me in the tummy, and it has stayed with me ever since. So when I'm looking to plan a session or design a session, my first questions are: if I was in this, would I enjoy it? Do I get the chance to be involved, to change the game, to influence the game? How involved am I going to be? If I start ticking those boxes, I'm thinking, right, the session is heading in the right direction. But without that initial planning thoughts, it's quite difficult, because we might get the football bit right, but you won't get the other bit right.
Well, I think it's testament to your probably sessions that Nathan was brave enough to be able to say that to you, because there's probably lots of players that wouldn't say that to their coaches because of the way the environment might be, and they don't feel they can speak up. So even though there was work to do to improve, and you reflected on that and made the changes, you must have run a session where actually the players could at least say to you, look, I'm not enjoying it. Yeah. We could do something better. So fair play to you and fair play to Nathan. What about things like player rotation and equal game time? Are these things you think are important in the foundation phase? And if so, why?
Yeah, two main reasons. During lockdown, we were lucky enough to have weekly meetings with some skill acquisition experts from universities in this country and in Portugal. And one of the things that they said that really resonated with my work in the foundation phase was the fact that children need to experience the game in different ways. And when we opened that up, it was about in different positions, from different perspectives, from a particular side of the pitch, so that your perceptions is as wide as possible and has been developed in as wide a manner as possible. So that really resonated with me. I think rotating positions is a really good thing, but I also think we have to look at the children, because when this was first mooted, we had coaches saying, I've got this player and he played right back last week, and next week I'm going to play him at left wing. For some children, that is absolutely fine. They'll say, where do you want me to play? And I'll be more than happy. For some children, the wheels might fall off if you introduce that kind of radical change on a weekly basis. But if you place somebody deep in defence on the right-hand side, and then you ask them to play in midfield on the right-hand side, and then ask them to play more in a more forward position on the right-hand side, the reference points are quite similar. So I think if you're going to do it, think about those kind of things, but also in communicating it to the players. In the modern game, if you start at right back, you certainly don't stay there. If you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold or Kyle Walker. So we actually want players to work up and down and across, during the game. And you can only do that if you have a more fluid approach rather than lock children in. Because when I took my son's team, it was a regular occurrence where an opponent's manager or coach would say, don't cross the halfway line. You're the defenders. You don't cross the halfway line. Well, actually, we're now saying we want to produce centre-backs who can burst into midfield, attract their defensive midfield lines, and then play around them. So I'm saying, why would we lock children in during their formative years and during that magical period of development when it's the perfect preparation for the adult game?
Totally
Sorry,
agree.
A bit of a rant there, Scott.
No. Well, we want the rants. Brilliant. And like you say, we've got to prepare not for the game today, right? What the game will look like in 5, 10 or 15 years time. We've seen the changes over the last 10 years and how it's evolved. So I don't see it getting more defensive, and more restricted. I see it being more open and more free. So no, it's great. You've mentioned the format a couple of times. So again, I don't want to get controversial, and I appreciate these things can be controversial, but the formats of the game have changed, and we've had the smaller size formats now with the 5-a-side and the 7-a-side, 9, then 11, which is fantastic. We play quite a lot of 3v3 as well with our younger ones, which is a great format. Are you happy with the formats now personally? Is it, do you think we've got it right, or is there still work to be done on the formats?
If I go back to the early years program, the suggested format, in fact, the mandated format is 2v2. So we've got these under fives and under sixes who, because in grassroots, they would become their under seven team. What the coaches we found were doing was playing 5v5 with under fives, and that was too much. But because it's the format that you're going to play in a year, 18 months' time, it seems quite obvious that that's what you'd prepare the children for. But if we're looking at development and we're looking at where the child is at, that format is too big. So in our early years program, the children play 2v2. And if there's an odd number and there's 3 on one side and 2 on the other, that's fine also. We also advocate that the coaches are very close to the action. And when the ball goes out of play, instead of 5 or 4 children running after the ball, the coach has already dropped the next ball in. And it's been almost a revelation for some coaches because we keep all the kids on the pitch. It keeps the game going. If somebody hasn't touched the ball for a while, that's the one that the coach rolls the ball to. So we're almost drawing the kids into the game all of the time. So 2v2 will come in at under fives and under sixes. That means we need to look at whether 5v5 is the right format at under sevens. Personally, I've suggested that we go 3v3 at under sevens and under eights, which I think is a really nice stepping stone and a nice lead in to 5v5 at under nines and under tens. And I think if we're really going after developing more skillful players, that is a smoother route if we want players to touch the ball more, make more decisions, move, like a footballer with the ball at your feet and without the ball at your feet for more years. That kind of works in my head.
More touches, more rotation, more decisions can only be a good thing, can't they? And look, again, kind of controversial, but that I live and breathe the grassroots football space, and there certainly is a race to the next format. So when you're playing 5-a-side, your eyes on 7-a-side. When you're playing 7-a-side, your eyes on 9-a-side. We've never played a team up a year, but I know a lot of coaches that do that, not players but whole teams. And again, it just seems like there's that race to the adult format of the game, and with that comes all those pressures and those expectations as well. So you lose a lot of these things. And I guess if you can take those kind of pressures away, then that's going to be a good thing for the players and their development.
If we remember that phrase that I used about celebrating children choosing football, I think the 2v2, we have no idea which children are going to go on and play football for the rest of their lives. But we do know that they come because they're hooked into football. They may have seen it on the TV. We want them to be physically active and have fun. So we've got them. So if we then say, right, let's celebrate it with 2v2, celebrate it at 3v3, then knowing that at 5v5 and under nines and under tens, the competition bit might become more of a priority. But you've had 4 years where we've just celebrated you becoming as skillful as you can be and choosing football. And I think because the children are so young, that's going to catch more children staying with the program than going competitive too early.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's funny you say it, and I'm thinking now about this. I predominantly work with under 13s and under 10s group, and the amount of time on training that we spend doing 3v3s, 4v4s, or 1v1s is probably more than half of each training session, maybe more anyway. So, we're still focused on that. And I think the players are as good as well because of that. It'd be easy to get distracted and just kind of think about, okay, the 11-a-side or this 9-a-side format. But actually, you can still play 11 and 9-a-side football if you want to. The players are just better at playing football because they've had more touches and they understand it transfers up, I guess, with better quality.
Certainly, yeah, and I think the one thing that we don't know, but we have to try to predict what might happen if we adopt this approach. And a lot of the 9-a-side and 11-a-side game, the player combinations are probably in twos and threes.
Yeah.
So if you've had that kind of experience with coaches who really understand how to combine, when it's 2v2 or 3v2, if you've got that knowledge as a player, the next step for the coach and the player is to say, what does that look like when we play 9v9? Because although there's more players on the pitch, our 2v2 and 3v3 combinations are going to be the real key to being successful in this format. So I think we can make a real case for saying using the smaller formats is great for all the developmental reasons. But as soon as we get coaches who are highly skilled at placing that skill within the larger formats, then we're going to get the kind of really intricate combinations and understanding between players that you need at the highest level.
Because 11-a-side football is lots of little mini 2v2, 3v3s, 1v1s, isn't it? Or small
Exactly.
overloaded, and you're so right. And then what you get, I think, you see a better team performance. And yes, at the highest level for sure, but even at whatever level, if your team's playing a better brand of football and they're all linking up and enjoying their football and being more creative and expansive in their game, that can only be a good thing.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that even at 11-a-side, the team will only be as good as its weakest link. And if we, through their development years, help each player to be as good technically as an individual that they can be, you're on a fairly good footing. If you then say, start putting those players together in twos and threes, and they really understand how to take an opponent out the game, how we can eliminate opponents with all this intricate combination play, you place that into a team full of those players, and that's when you're going to start doing really, really well.
Sure, definitely. We speak a lot about how coaches what they can do to help and support, and I think there's a lot of, dare I say, pressure on coaches. I know we embrace it and we like that. We understand that, but how important is it that clubs and parents are also part of this process and this journey, particularly when we're asking maybe to do things that they don't maybe understand while we're asking?
I think the magic happens when the parents and the coaches share the vision, really. But in order to do that, there's got to be a lot of communication between the two. I think if parents are supportive of the philosophy, the environment, the approach that the coaches want to bring to the team, I think that's when it works so much better than if there's a disconnect. Because the players are going to get mixed messages if the parents are expecting something else, or they're going to get mixed messages if the coach tries to please, me as a coach developer saying, I would like you to adopt this approach, but the parents actually want something different. The coach is going to fall between two stools and end up pleasing nobody. So I think really clear dialogue between the coach and the parents and say, look, this is what we want to try to create, and we need your help to do it. But it will look like this. So on training nights, you may see more of this and less of this, but this is the reasoning behind it. You may see on match days that we make sure that every player plays, because I don't think any player has ever developed by standing and watching. So for me, it's certainly in your early years, we have to try to get players on the pitch. So explaining that to parents might just soften this thing about, if you bring him on or her on, we're going to lose. Well, actually, we're bringing them on because they need the development as well. So I think that the dialogue is crucial in that respect, Scott.
We'll come on to match day experience if that's okay, but just back to the training side then. How do you think like the foundation-based training has kind of improved over the last 5 years or so? Or do you think it's improved? And if so, kind of how has it improved?
Because I don't see training on a regular basis within the grassroots game, I see it probably more in the academy system. The academy system has gone through a huge transformation. There was some research done a few years back now, and I think we were over about 60% of training time was unopposed or warm-ups and that kind of activity that included no real decision making. If you go into an academy now, you will see major decision making. You'll see opposed work for most of the practices. We're actually pushing at a door saying, can we include more underloaded work as well? So that players, if we're pushing them towards the end point, the adult game, certainly at the highest level, in most attacking phases, you're outnumbered. So if we're upskilling the kids really early on, I think they'll reach the point where they can work in underloaded practices even quicker. But we've obviously got to balance that off with, you know, the needs of the players. So I think there's been a huge change in the academies. What I have seen in the grassroots game is a real willingness to give up so much time to develop yourself as a coach. Our road shows were so popular with the coaches. We had one in Leeds where we had over 300 coaches, which for a CPD event is just crazy. So I think if we can send out the right messages and present the messages and the content in the right way, we're going to get engagement. And I think if you get engagement, you're going to get change. It'll probably never be as quick as we want it to be. But I do think for volunteer coaches who give up so much time in the grassroots game, there is a real desire to do it the best that they can.
Being kind of submersed in it over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, I can definitely say that the work that you and the FA have done with getting key messages out there is filtered through 100%, not just in the teams that I coach personally and in the club that I'm at, but also from what I see from the other coaches I speak to and we play against, that the training has just got so much better. I think, you know, there's a ball per player. There's more ball rolling time. There's more about touches. It's more about, you know, stay on the ball and be brave. You know, I definitely see that. And that's a lot of the key messages I think that come from you and the stuff that you've driven. So congratulations. And it's good to see. Even my coaching, you know, when I started 10 years ago, I would have lines and we would have boys doing unopposed passing back and forth to each other. I mean, they were so bored out of their brains, blessed, and they were lovely. I didn't have a Nathan to tell me they were bored. I wish I did have a Nathan to tell me. I had to find it out myself. But, you know, you realise, and like you say, the CPD sessions I've been on 2 of the road shows and they've been fantastic. And, you know, it's made a massive difference. So on the training side, I think we've made some great grounds, particularly over here in England. However, what's your views? Maybe again, it's a bit unfair. I don't know how much of this you see or don't see with the match day experience. So we're talking now maybe Saturday or Sunday, you know, grassroots leagues football from maybe under 7s up to, I don't know, 13s, 14s, 15s. What's your view on that?
Yeah, again, I'm not talking from a position of strength here, having, you know, seen on a regular basis what happens. What I do know from our county FAs is that the incidences of fines and disciplinary issues are increasing. So that would lead you to believe that sometimes the environment on the touchline is not right. And if we're trying to encourage more younger referees, players who have finished their careers to go back into refereeing and being the administrators of the game, it's actually going to be quite difficult if the environment there is toxic. And I'm not saying it is at the moment, but we need to prevent it getting anywhere near that. And I think, again, the role of the coach and the role of the parents has to be as a role model who helps the children deal with winning and losing with dignity, respect, and sportsmanship. It sounds so simple, but it's really hard when it's a close match, or, you know, there's some shenanigans going on. And, you know, I personally found it really difficult when my son was fouled, because I'm thinking, you know, particularly when the opposition coaches might be saying, get stuck in, you know, stop him or whatever. And you're thinking, that's my son. But then you've got to remember that you're looking after, you know, potentially 13, 14, 15 players. So you've got to try and set the right example. And I think we can. But I think we have to help the players to become totally committed and competitive when on the pitch. but always within the rules of the game. But as soon as the game is over, you can actually be a nice person. Being a nice person off the pitch doesn't mean that you can be hugely competitive on it. It doesn't. You can be the same. And there's a thing in early childhood called theories of mind. And it's where children begin to learn that in a restaurant, this is how you behave. And when you're with your nan, this is how you behave. And when you're at home, whoa, this is how you behave. That development continues. So on a football field, we say, this is how you behave. We want you competitive. We want you to be, we want you to win every tackle and to be the best player that you can be. But then as soon as the game is over, dignity, respect, and sportsmanship is so important.
So again, I appreciate the fact that you maybe don't see as much of the match day experience as because of the roles that you do. How important is it that coaches, parents, and clubs support long-term development on match day as much as they do in a training session? So the decisions that you make and the actions and the way you conduct yourself, not necessarily the players, because agreed that they've got an obligation too, but a lot of these are young and be influenced by the adults that are supporting the process. How important is it as that they recognize actually, there is a difference between taking maybe a results focused approach to a match where we make decisions that are about trying to get a result. I'm not going to say the word winning because I don't think winning is the issue here, but a result. And there's also decisions we might make that actually might compromise the result, but actually are better for the development of the players that we've got.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that really spring to mind in that the match day should almost be an extension of what you want the team to become. And that's obviously what you're working on in training. And the match day, without taking away the importance of the performance and the result, it's really how far along this journey are we in becoming the kind of team that we want to become? Because in training, I think that's when the coach begins to set out the kind of team that and the way that you want to play. So we've just got a chance to test it out against a team that we don't know, or a team that's at the top of the league, or a team that's at the bottom of the league. How is our style, our philosophy, our approach to our team? How is that developing in all of these different situations and in all of these different contexts? I think if we can adopt that, you can still try to perform and get the result as much as you ever did. But I just think it's a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And it's about how you see the game and what you want, isn't it? But I guess what you want to make sure you're doing is the message you give at your training sessions come across in the match day, and so it doesn't just fall apart there. And it's two different things, right? You don't train really nice and do the right things, but then on match day it becomes a different proposition, because for the children they'll get confused, right? And it becomes not fun anymore.
It's also how you see winning, because I'm going to go back to Tom's team. We had a chance to win the league. And we had one match to go. And we lost 3 players who couldn't do it, couldn't reschedule the fixture. So we actually played the last game where we could have won the league. We played 6 against 9. And for about 3/4 of the game, the 6 on our team just absolutely played out of their skin. The other team had 3 subs as well as the 9 on the pitch and were making regular substitutions. So the energy levels of our team just went down and down and down, and we lost. And the players felt cheated. They felt as though the league had let them down. The opposition had let them down by making all the subs. And, they didn't even offer to take a player off and try to even it up. So it became a really good match. But do you know what? The players left thinking we've actually won. The result almost became secondary because we focused on how people they'd raised everything and given everything in a really tough situation. For me, that's a win. Forget the scoreline.
So true. I think one of the tricks that we learned quite early was to make match days winning a definition about what we did in training. So whatever we worked on in training, like if we can see that, that's us winning. If the result doesn't matter, and actually when you see the goals that go in, particularly in the younger age groups, when they're maybe 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, half the goals are just like nonsense goals, if you like. It's just a mistake or something's happened, and half are good goals, but you've got to see it for what it is. But actually, as soon as you shift the focus from the result to something else, it doesn't take the result away, but it dilutes it and allows you, as a coach, it means you can keep making good decisions for the players' long-term interest rather than for that moment.
If those 6 players take that same attitude and that confidence that they gained in that into the next game, when it's going to be equal numbers, that is going to set you up, for the future. So I think how we frame winning is important.
100%. You mentioned a bit earlier on about the academy system and obviously them signing players. I'm not necessarily signing players, but certainly recruiting players quite young. I guess a filter down to that is when you work in the grassroots space and other parents see other players being picked up by these academy clubs, it adds another kind of pressure, if you like, or another expectation around professionalizing the youth game. What's your views on kind of the academy system and them picking up players at younger age groups? If you don't mind me asking, again, I don't want to get any controversial situation.
No, not
but
at all. It does give me an opportunity to speak from the heart, because probably 6 or 7 years ago, Scott, this trend began, and I was really quite worried partly because some academies were bringing children in for the wrong reasons. It was because if we don't bring them in, the club down the road will bring them in. For me, that's completely wrong. But also, there wasn't the kind of expertise we needed within the coaching programs and the coaches at that very young end of the academy. 6 or 7 years ago, we started the Advanced Youth Award. And I think that has developed a large number of foundation phase experts. And I think what that has done is transfer that knowledge and learning at that really high level into the pre-academy and very young academy programs of the professional clubs. So I think the work that they do now is really off the scale. And I can say that with a lot of confidence. There are some differences, but in the main, there's been a huge increase in the experiences and opportunities that children get if they are lucky enough to join an academy right at the beginning. It's still balanced off with kids will be retained or released. They're told they're wanted or they're not wanted. We're never going to get away with that. But I think even the academies are now looking at that, and more are saying, if you join us, we're going to give you the foundation phase. So you will be with us for the foundation phase. And it's only if it really doesn't suit your child that we will even discuss, releasing. So the kids are going to get 3 years of these great experiences. Some of the Category 1 clubs are able to take their 9-year-old kids abroad 3 or 4 times a year, and to play really good opposition. And I think those kind of initiatives don't just develop footballers, but they develop children with the social skills, the people skills that are going to be so important, because the coaches know that it's an opportunity to develop those things as well as football. So I think that's where we've made some really good strides. So I think if a child has an opportunity, as a parent, I would be asking some really, critical questions about what does learning look like in your academy system? How are you going to look after them? If there's an area that needs developing, how are you going to feed it back? And what does that look like? And so I would really use that opportunity to actually say, I need to find the best club for my son or daughter. But I do think that the professional academies have made real strides in the right direction.
And you mentioned the Advanced Youth Award. I had the fortunate circumstance of being able to do the Youth Award, so the youth modules 1, 2, and 3, and then the course at the end, which are fantastic. Which I think now are embedded in the courses more broadly. That they were probably, I enjoyed all my courses. They were probably the ones I enjoyed the most. Is there room for, or the possibility of having a qualification maybe below maybe the UEFA B, but or UEFA B level, but focused on foundation phase football for grassroots coaches? Because I like, this is a personal request now, but I can't go any further really unless I get myself into a academy system or whatever else. I've kind of gone as far as I go in my badges, but I'd love to become more of an expert in the younger age groups. Is that something that's just me, or is that something that might be a broader possibility?
Yeah, the landscape is changing, and it's changing as we speak, actually, Scott, because there's a new UEFA C qualification that's now, it's out there in the public domain. It's not in every county at the moment because we're building the number of tutors and we're training the tutors actually at the moment. So when they're all trained up and ready to be deployed, there will be more UEFA C qualifications, which probably equates to the old level 2. But it's a really good course. It's about skillful players. It's about the spirit of football, and about how do we, if children choose football, how do we make sure that we give them those great experiences? But there's also a real focus on small number practices and becoming better as a coach in observing them, but also understanding the skill development that can come through those small number practices. So that's one that's going to change the landscape. There's also talk of a UEFA B youth, which I think a lot of our old youth award stuff will go into. There's also discussions about, is there the possibility that we could have an advanced youth award for the grassroots game? Because if we are about raising standards, for me, it's got to be across the game, because we get so many coaches who work in grassroots one week and then get an opportunity to work in an academy. So you want good coaches everywhere. So I think the more we can offer a diverse route for coach development through the courses that we develop, I think the better it will be.
That sounds excellent. I mean, the UEFA B youth would be fantastic. The advanced youth would open to the grassroots space would be brilliant. I'm lucky enough that I've got a few contacts at Cat 1 academies where they let me go and observe, and I learned so much just watching. And you're right what you said. I mean, the kids go in there, they go bouncing in the sessions, they come bouncing out, they love every minute of it. You know, they're fully engaged. It doesn't feel like a pressured environment. And not only are they really good young little football players, but they're also great kids, good manners, good all that kind of stuff, which is part of the environment that's created there. And I've learned a lot that we kind of take some of that stuff back in our little grassroots space by seeing the work that goes on there. But not everyone gets that chance. You know, not everyone gets a chance to go and see them. So those courses would be great if they could filter down. Getting to the end of the time, so I won't keep you too long, but just what's your thoughts maybe on how things may develop over the next 5 or 10 years? If you've got a crystal ball and you're looking at your training and or matches or coach development, you know, what's your thoughts and your views on that?
I think that the big thing that we're going to have to wrestle with, it's already coming in the United States, about heading protocols. So it's something that we have to address here. And there are discussions and happening at the moment that may influence the landscape. So I think that's one change from a health and safety point of view, and just really safeguarding our children right from the get-go. Because the research, until we're really sure on the research about what the repercussions are going to be, I think we have to err on the side of caution. So it may be that there are some subtle tweaks in the game during those early years. I think as you move closer to the adult game, then obviously it has to represent the adult game in a more, in a closer way. So I think that's one thing. I think if the 2v2 at the early years does what I think it will, I think it will give us a mandate to actually say, come on, let's really build on the skill development and the enjoyment and involvement that kids get from reducing the numbers just a little bit. And if that pushes back the time when we bring in the 9v9 or the 11v11, I think that's a good thing, because I think there's still loads of time to develop what you need to be effective at 11v11. But that opportunity to build engagement and build understanding and build your skill levels, we can't compromise on that. So in an ideal world, that's where I would like to see things going. I don't know how the nation is going to react when we win the World Cup in Qatar. So
yeah, well, it will show everything's working. We're heading the right way. The problem with that is I think we're done and we've it's all fixed and nothing's a plan going forward. What about multi-sports, Pete? I mean, look, my boys play and they play a lot of football. I can't stop them playing. I try and get them off a night a week every now and then and stuff. But kids play a lot of football now. I mean, some of my boys' friends that are in academy systems, they are literally playing every single day.
yeah.
Is it too much? Do we need to dial down sometimes? And is it about quality rather than quantity? And what about multi-sport? Should they be doing other things as well? What's your view on that?
It sounds as though I'm plugging our early years program. Our early years program is a diversification program. The clubs, we've got 24 clubs piloting the program at the moment. They get an equipment pack that has bazooka goals, tug of war ropes, hula hoops, bean bags, all manner of equipment with a range of activity cards that actually says, let's get the children playing in this way and taking part in these activities. We've had to communicate clearly with the parents in that in doing these things, it's not only great for your child's overall development because they might choose another sport, but it's also great if they do choose football because balance, coordination, changing speed and direction, being skillful with your body is a great thing anyway, but it's also a great thing for football. So we're going to blast the kids during this period. Football is not an early specialization sport. And I think if you are in an academy and you're doing lots and lots of hours of football training, you've got the perfect opportunity to include some other activities that use different muscles, challenge your thinking and tactics in a different way that can add to your overall football development, knowing that at some point soon you're going to specialize. But I think that should be certainly in the youth development phase around 14, 15, 16.
Okay, my final question, and we ask all our guests this question, so I know if you've done your research not on the questions I sent you beforehand or not.
God.
But yeah, if there was one thing you could change about the world of coaching, what might that be?
I keep it. You're going to think I've got a secret agenda. Well, it's not even secret now. So I haven't stopped talking about it. I do think a close look at the formats leading up to 11v11 would bring us real benefits and dividends, but it requires a cultural shift and a cultural change. And some people are going to feel threatened. People are going to say, well, you're undervaluing everything that's gone on before and we've had success and all of this. We're actually not. We're trying to make it fit more closely to the age and stage of development of the children. And I think if we want, this is a big statement, our under-19s have just won their European competition. The technical ability of those players would have started 10 years ago in the academies where we were just beginning to challenge how things had always been, and we wanted this focus on individual development. Those players are highly, highly skilled as individuals, and through their journey, they're going to be put together into brilliant 2s and 3s, into brilliant units, and then eventually a brilliant team that's going to win something. That starts with what happens when your child at 5 years of age says, Mum, Dad, I want to try football. And I think I just see it so clearly, and I may be barking mad, but I just see it so clearly what the journey could be. And with some subtle tweaks and changes, I think we could be onto something quite great.
Well, it feels like with what's gone on the last 5 or 10 years, so in the academy system at the FA and things, we've seen those certainly some really good green shoots and some positive signs with how it's
Yeah,
filtered through at the top end. And I would say that filters down even through to the grassroots space. We see it now. I see high ability kids playing football. See some really good stuff going on, and it's great to see. So that's a great one. I'm sure it's gonna. If it's best for the kids, right, it should happen, right? And that's the way it should be.
yeah,
If it's in the best interest for the kids.
absolutely.
Pete,
Yeah.
thanks so much for your time. You've been absolutely awesome. If people, you were kind enough to respond back to me really quickly when we reached out to you. If people want to find out more about you, the work you do, or reach out to you, what's the best way of going about that?
The FA Boot Room is a fabulous resource, and we're also developing a new learning platform. So that's not out in the public domain yet, but it's almost there. And I think a lot of what I stand for, a lot of the ideas, the sessions, the content that we want coaches to try to look at and understand, and then influence their coaching, it's on there. On Twitter, that's another good format just to share good practice, share ideas, and also to reinforce key messages. On Twitter, we've got our Foundation Phase Hall of Fame. So if coaches are within all safeguarding protocols, if they have videos of foundation phase kids who are embodying skillfulness, creativity, and innovation, and it doesn't have to work, but if they're trying it, send it in on Twitter to me, and we'll blast the footballing community, because we want to build up this hall of fame where grassroots coaches are actually saying, I can play a part in the development of football in this nation, in this country. It's a small part, but I want to do it by encouraging my players to be as skillful as possible. And here's an example. Send it in, and we'll get it out in right across social media. I want that to go massive.
That sounds brilliant. I didn't know about that, Pete. So we'll put the links into the show notes, all that stuff, so people can find it nice and easy, and hopefully we'll get even more uptake on that as well. Pete, thank you so much, Tom. I'm really grateful. You've been awesome. You've covered the topic so well. Would you come back on again at some point in the future? Maybe let us know how the early years program's going.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, best
no
of luck
problem.
with it. I assume you're going to get a bit of downtime for the summer, a bit of a break, maybe.
I'm going away next Friday, actually. Yeah.
For
the early years program, we're filming tomorrow, so we'll have kids doing all of the things that we've spoken about today, and I think that's how we'll begin to communicate a lot of the key messages that we've touched on today.
Awesome. We'll look out for those. Brilliant. Well, look, best luck with the program. Enjoy your summer holiday, well-earned break, and look, hopefully we'll get you back on maybe 6 months or so to update how things are going.
Scott, that's brilliant. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Pete. This episode was brought to you in association with our friends at Soccer Coach Weekly. Established since 2006, Soccer Coach Weekly is a leading source of inspiration and advice for all grassroots coaches. Join thousands of youth soccer coaches just like you, saving time and effort in their goal of having the most effective, enjoyable and successful coaching journey for them and their players. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode.